Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's a great time to be talking about business. I am so happy that you are here and that we are doing this again. So as I mentioned, if you didn't see last week's show, we had some great feedback about it, and I'm really excited to be bringing this to you every week, where we, as small business owners and the small business owner community, we come together and look at what's been happening in the world of small business, what's relevant to you, the small business owner, and that we will be able to get it back into sort of making things relevant. In this show today, in this episode, we're going to be looking at AI as the main theme, but we're also going to be looking at power and control, because AI kind of went a little bit viral over the last week with all its positives and negatives. But we're also going to be talking a little bit about Meta and the paywalls that they're putting up, both for business users as well as for just regular users themselves, and how that could impact you as a small business owner. All that and a whole bunch more. But before we start, why don't you put in the chat where you're from? Excited to be back again, as I can see, and I'd love to see where you're from and how things are for you. And also let me know if you are using AI in your business right now. Say, using AI in my business right now. If you're not, saying no way, not in a million years. And I'd like to see what it is that you are using, if you are using it or not. Right, ready to get started? Awesome. So let's go on to our first topic. And the first topic is OpenClaw or Clawdbot or Moltbot, or whichever way you want to call it. Now, this is something that's actually been causing the world by storm. I think it's covered in the Wall Street Journal. It's been covered in quite a lot of places as well, the Guardian, so many other places. And the idea behind it is that for the first time, we now have AI agents that can work for you 24/7. They are agents that will be able to act for you. And it's not necessarily a more smart bot or more smarter sort of AI, but it is essentially something that will be able to replace your employees, or shall it? Now, the problem is that you are potentially handing over your nuclear codes to this kind of AI. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, nuclear codes for your business means your money, your finances, your customers, your clients, your reputation, your brand, your credibility, your IP, all of these kind of things. Now, AI is asking for all of these. It's asking for your credit card details, because if you haven't heard already, OpenClaw, initially used to be called Clawdbot, now being rebranded and named, is something that you can install either on the cloud, or you can actually buy. A lot of people are buying Mac Minis at the moment, where they're just installing it on there, and essentially it becomes your 24/7 AI agent. It will work for you 24/7. It will be able to send emails on your behalf. It will be able to call you and speak to you. It will be able to communicate with your customers. It will be able to do a whole bunch more. Now, there is a positive side to this, and we're going to be talking about the negative risks in a second. But in order for it to be able to do that, you are giving it all of your login access into your Gmail or Microsoft, or whichever email account you use. It's giving you it's asking access for a whole bunch of things. I've been watching quite a few people online who've been testing it out, and it's gone away and sort of generated, because it had access to one person's credit card. And this video actually went quite viral on YouTube, not on YouTube, sorry, on X and on TikTok. It went viral because essentially the agent, the AI agent, actually ended up giving him a call, voice call. And called him, and he was like, "I'd never asked you to give me a voice call." And the agent literally said, "Yes, I thought it would be more effective if I had a voice rather than texting you, because you're now able to text it through WhatsApp or Slack or iMessage or any of these things." And it went and it generated and it opened up an account online, paid for the subscription to be able to have a voice, downloaded the voice, picked and chose a voice for itself, and then called the person themselves. Now, I'm not going to get into too much details of what it can and what it can't do. That's not the conversation for today. Today's conversation really is, should we be using this in our business right now? And is this something that we should be looking at? Because definitely this seems like a slight tipping point. Now, there are a lot of risks. It's not perfect. There's a long way to go. But at the same time, this is something that is a new kind of tipping point, or a new kind of like a sort of inflection point, if you will, because we had GPT 3.5, I think, was the one that really went mainstream, Chat GPT 3.5. And past that point, people have been talking a lot about AI agents. People have been talking a lot about putting up things like NA10 and automations, and people have been talking about sort of like replicating your voice and sending out, appointment setters and things like that. But for the first time now, we have somebody who's actually got an agent. I'm saying somebody. We've got an AI agent that's going to be able to sit there and do background research for you overnight. It will be able to create content for you overnight. It will be, yeah, super creeps. I know all of this. I see these comments now. One of the things is that you should be able to actually now decide, all right, okay, AI is no longer going to start being a tool. Potentially, it could start replacing your employees. And it could start replacing people. And no, let me rephrase that. It's not going to potentially start replacing people. Down the line, it will replace roles. In the same way that the computer replaced the role of somebody who was sitting, or the calculator replaced somebody who was sitting there doing manual arithmetic and maths in their head and passing it down the information and computer. As technology goes through, technology will replace and will make things that were in the past redundant. And our role as business owners is to be responsible enough to sit there and say, okay, how are we going to use this in a way that impacts us as business owners positively? Because we don't want to use tools for the sake of using tools. We want to be able to see how we're going to be doing this. Now, as a CEO and as the CEO of your business, your job is not output. Your job is judgment. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that down the line in this episode. But your job is judgment, and people's jobs down the line is going to be, how do we control and how do we make sure that we've got these AI agents doing what we want them to do, right? So that needs to become as part of your strategy, and you need to start looking at these agents that you're employing in a way, in the same way that you're bringing in a new employee. Because if we start looking at the second side of things, so we've had a look at the positive side of things in terms of like what this thing can do for you. It can. It will be able to do marketing for you. It will be able to do sales for you, potentially. It will be able to do a whole bunch of things. All of these things it will be able to do. However, because of that, there's a risk tax that you're now getting involved in. A lot of scams, like with OpenClaw at the moment, it has skills that you can install very similar to the App Store or plugins that you say, okay, install this skill. Now, what does that actually mean? If you are going to be able to actually install these skills, a lot of these skills sometimes can be scam. They can be things where they're coming into, because you can now send a message inside WhatsApp to say to your agent, do this and this and this. If somebody can hack that, if somebody can actually send a message, if you actually have it inside a, please don't do this, have your agent inside a WhatsApp group, anybody in that group will be able to actually send you a message, and they have complete access. And if they've got access to your credit card details, if they've got access to your client database, that becomes a serious privacy law risk. It becomes a serious financial risk, and you could end up losing quite a lot of things. And you need to make sure that you've got the right policies in place, and you need to make sure that you've got all of these things in place. Now, it's the policies that you need to be able to put through, as Gabriel actually mentioned. I can see that in the chat as well. But it's also a few other things that you want to be able to make sure that you're actually now training your agents and training your AI in a way that you're not necessarily giving them the nuclear codes or the keys to your business until you're able, and until we're sure that we've got the right security measurements in place. Now, if you bring in a new employee, you're going to sit there and you're going to say to them, hey, do this task, here's the SOP, here's the procedure, and come back to me to get approval. You're not necessarily giving out responsibility and authority from day one. And this is the kind of thing that we need to start looking at in terms of like, how do we make sure that we as CEOs, we as business owners are taking away and removing the responsibility aspect until it's safe, until it's ready. And at the moment, just making sure that we are actually going through and doing that in itself. So that's basically, from that aspect, that's kind of where we want to be able to look at. So in my opinion, should you start installing OpenClaw right now? It depends. It really depends, because OpenClaw is not itself an AI tool. It is not itself an AI model. Sorry, it's not itself an AI model. It's a tool. and it uses different AI models such as Claude, such as OpenAI's GPT, such as Gemini, whichever model. You can actually even install local models yourself. The idea behind this is that it's not supposed to be, it depends from that perspective in terms of how ready you are and your business is and how you know how you're going to use this. So before installing a tool for the sake of installing a tool, make sure that you're installing a strategy in place and understanding how AI as a tool is going to be able to help you within your strategy, and how AI as an employee is going to be able to help you with the strategy, and whether or not it's going to be able to actually replace potential human hires that you're going to make. And that's the kind of thing that you need to be making sure that you're doing from that perspective. Anyway, I would like to hear in the chat below and in the comments what your thoughts are. Have you actually installed OpenClaw? Have you had a go at it? Is this something that you are actually entertaining? And if so, how much privileges and permissions have you given it? Have you given it your credit card details? Have you given it actually access to your clients and customers so it can communicate with them? Have you given it access to your files? Because it could also delete your files, right? It could actually change your files. At the moment, Claude comes in and actually organizes all of your folders in a way, but at the same time, have you given it deletion permissions? Have you given it all of these kind of things? I would love to hear your comments, and I would love to hear what kind of things are you using inside your business right now in terms of AI, if you're not going to be able to do that right now. I see this here saying, couldn't give you a bigger no. I know. I wouldn't do the same thing as well right now. However, you'll be very, very surprised. You'll be very, very surprised how quickly that's going to change. Because way back whenever there's a new technology or a new innovation that comes off, people will sit there typically and say, I'm not going to do that. There is no way that I'm going to do that. And then it becomes very, very strange that we're doing certain things. Back when the internet first came out, people were sitting there saying, there is no way that I'm going to put my credit card details online. No way. However, we all do it now. Very, very, very few people actually don't put their credit card details online. And online shopping has become a thing. And this is something that over time, as the security improves and things like that, this will change. And I think that rather than sitting down and saying, absolutely not, which is the case, which is what you should be saying right now. So you are completely right at this juncture. You are completely right at this juncture. Absolutely not. However, what needs to be in place before we can do this, because this is happening and this is coming, and this is something where we're going down that path. Okay, so that's AI, that's OpenClaw, that's Clawdbot, and all of the great stuff that's going on. I'm experimenting with it, and I will keep you updated if things change. And one last thing that I would like to say about AI before we move on to the next topic is, as Gabriel is saying, I think this is an important point. If you don't use AI, you'll get left behind. Very, very fast. This is the new. We've had 3 big movements, I guess, over the last 20 years or so. We've had the internet and the whole .com thing, and this has been a major shift. And if you're not on the internet right now, what are you doing? And then after that came Web 2.0, which was social media, pretty much. This is the 3rd big thing that's happening. And in my humble opinion, take whatever that means to you, or to me, or to anyone. In my humble opinion, businesses will be valued down the line, not because of just the IP or the business idea that they've got, because everyone's going to be able to create a business idea using an AI agent. Everyone's going to be able to hire a team. It's going to be the AI IP that you build. It's your AI processes. It's your AI prompts. It's your AI infrastructure and systems and strategy that you put in place so that it could drive your business more effectively and more efficiently. And how you're going to be able to leverage that down the line, not in order to just, hey, let me jump on the bandwagon, but it's basically, how do I utilize this thing to provide me with the leverage? Because if you're not doing it, you can be sure that everybody else in your industry is going to be doing it. And that's kind of, I guess, the last thing that I will leave with you from a perspective of AI. If we can, we'll see. I've got a I'm looking at the poll here that we've had. Would you delegate to AI employees at the moment? Actually, that's quite surprising. Yes, this is the future, 55%. Hell no is 45%, which means that we're still split. We're still split, but the shift is happening more towards the positive than the negative. And my prediction down the line is that will change even more as we go down the line. Right, let's move on to the next topic. The next topic is Meta. And Meta has been playing around and testing quite a few things over the last few months. And they have been starting to implement subscriptions and charges to different sides of the table. So to business owners, they are now implementing and testing getting businesses to pay for the number of links that they can provide. But at the same time, they are beginning to charge, especially in the UK, in England. They've began to start implementing and imposing charges for users if they want to not see any ads, or if they don't want the ads to be tracked and personalized. And this poses an interesting thing for us as business owners, because our marketing or an ability to market on these platforms is going to become a lot more expensive, a lot more difficult. And at the same time, we're potentially advertising to people who are paying to not to be advertised to, right? And the people and where are you on this? And it brings the question from my perspective as a business owner and as as the CEO of a company and yourselves as CEOs, we need to be looking at this and saying, okay, what's power and what's control here? Because that's the same issue with AI. Where is the power and where is the control happening? How much power can we leverage? And how much control do we let go, and how much control do we take? And in this case for Meta as well, it's the same thing. We have zero power on these platforms in terms of the ability to own. We are renting a list of leads and clients, right? And one of the things that you and we should be doing as a business, as businesses, is being able to ensure, how do we own our client lists? How do we own our audiences? And how do we find ways to move people off of the platform so that we can actually get back to a point where we're getting that sort of thing? So we want to be able to make sure that we own this information, because if you get banned, or if they change their policy, because one day they'll change their policy and they'll be like, hey, if you want to subscribe, it's only $1. I think it's $3.99 at the moment that they're offering users in the UK to have an ad-free experience. And from the business owners, they're charging them, I think it's $12.99 or whatever it is, to be able to actually reduce links, to have limited links. Otherwise you pay more. And that divide is becoming a lot more difficult and a lot more expensive. And that's not including you being banned, or you being able to be against their policies, or you being any of that. And overnight, if you rely your business on that one thing, you could get shut down very easily, and you then lose all of your audience. And that is something that we've seen with several businesses, and we don't want to make sure, and I don't want you to be falling into the same trap. Hopefully that makes sense. So have you seen Meta advertised to you at the moment? We've actually seen it personally, where we've actually been approached by Meta to actually start subscribing to ad-free. Is this something that you've seen yourselves? Or is this something that you have not seen yet, but doing it from that perspective? And on top of that, how many of you actually have got your own audiences, have got your own email list, and not necessarily reliant on a platform? Let me know in the comments below. I'd like to try and understand whereabouts you are in that process. Just before we move on, thank you very much. Gabriel has sent in a super chat. Thank you, Gabriel, for supporting the channel. And as you know, over time, we will be sitting down, and when we start taking questions at the end of the show, we will be prioritizing super chats, because obviously people who want to support the channel, we'll make sure that we, we prioritize them a lot more in that aspect. So from Gabriel's perspective, he's basically saying, let's put that up again, guys, learn AI. There are courses and certificates. This is the way to go, and I couldn't agree more. Now, does this mean that you drop everything and AI is the only thing that you need to be doing? Probably not. It needs to be an integrated part of your strategy. I don't want it to turn into yet another shiny object and a rabbit hole that you go down. However, this is not a fad. This is not something that will come and go. This is something where the future is heading. And if you want to stay ahead of the curve, or if you want to keep up with the curve, this is something that you're going to need to do. Let me know in the chat below, actually, just out of curiosity and out of interest, is this something, is AI something that you would want me to start covering on our normal videos, like, how to utilize AI as business owners from a strategy perspective, systems perspective, what kind of things to use? Let me know in the chat below. Let's have a Y, a yes or a no, if that's something that interests you. I'd like to see that. And as these come in, I will just be able to just make sure that I'm looking at the chat, because I know that there's a little bit of a delay as things go on. Mariano is basically saying to me, my challenge is to set the objective, the tool I'll be using, and forget about FOMO by not being up to date on a weekly basis. That's great. That is really, really good. And it's something that you should be doing. But at the same time, FOMO is one thing, and the direction of where the world is heading is another thing. And it's something that we should make sure that we're heading down that direction. Okay. So let's move on to topic number 3. The next topic, and this is a creator spotlight. This is an article that was published in the Entrepreneur, and it was by a creator called Sahil Bloom. Right, so this is the article. It's by Sahil Bloom. I don't know why that happened, but for some reason it didn't work. So Sahil talks about having a think day. And this is something that actually, ironically, I did yesterday myself. And it was one of those things that I do on a regular basis. And I think it's something that you need to make sure that you schedule in. My leadership team and myself, we meet once a month, and every quarter we have almost like a few-day retreat where we sit down and we think strategy and we really think. Remember, like I said earlier, your job as the CEO of the business is to make judgments and decisions strategically. Your job is not output. I used to remember a person a long time ago, way before I became remotely successful in business, and he would say, I've forgotten who the person is, otherwise I would have referenced it. He would sit there and say, what is your job as the CEO? Do you know what your job description is as the CEO of the business? Your job description is for you to do nothing. You are not allowed to do anything inside your business. If you are acting as the real CEO inside your business, you are not allowed to do anything inside it. Now, I know that that is not realistic for the majority of us, because that is something that we still need to make sure that we're doing certain things on a day-to-day basis. But you need to be putting a transition plan towards that. And at the very least, as you're putting that transition plan in place, we need to make sure that we're scheduling the right time to be able to think and strategize and understand what it is that we want to do. Now, this is something that Sahil is talking about Bill Gates doing this, and this is something that I really think that is something that you should be trying to put down as well. Now, a couple of things that he put down, which I found which was really interesting, were a couple of questions that you should be asking yourself. If I repeated my current typical day for 100 days, would my life be better or worse? And I think that this is a question that you should be asking yourself. Is the typical day that you're doing something that's really going to push your life forward? And moving that forward from that perspective. This is something that if you're not, then what are we doing? Why are we doing this on a day-to-day basis? And how do we transition our way to make sure that our typical day is pushing our life forward, is pushing our business forward, is pushing value, is pushing leverage, right? At the end of the day, we're looking at your businesses. What are the constraints that we've got? How do we fix them? And then how do we actually put leverage in place of those constraints so that we can actually scale and grow? And that's the kind of thing that you should be thinking on a day-to-day basis. The second one was, if someone observed my actions for a week, what would they say my priorities are? And this is something that you should be asking yourself is from the outside perspective, what are people's views of what my priorities are, not are actually what do I think my priorities are? If I were the main character in a movie of my life, what would the audience be screaming at me to do right now? Because we know, deep inside, we know, right? Deep inside, we know. And that's the important thing, is we know that we're not doing the right things. We know that we're screaming at ourselves internally that we should be doing something else. And being able to really articulate that becomes a very, very important thing. So number 4 is, am I hunting antelope or chasing field mice? Antelope is the big thing that you should be hunting. That's your big game. That's the thing that you're going to be able to land, right? That's the big prize. Whereas actually what's probably happening is that you've been distracted by all these little tiny little mice that are running around that seem very urgent, seem very critical, seem very scary. However, it's actually not achieving anything, and you're just spending a lot of time sweating around, running around after these mice, excuse me, and trying to do that. And that's kind of what we don't want you to be able to do. So always hunt antelope. Last but not least, what are my strongest beliefs, and what would it take for me to change my mind on them? Now, there are a couple of other things, and I think that this is not the only format that you should be asking yourself, because you should be also asking yourself about your business, about the strategy of your business, about the systems behind your business. And if you need help, by the way, we do provide that on our programs, whether it's Groundbreaker, if you're under 6 figures. If you're under 6 figures, please join our community. It's great, and it will help you understand how to scale your business to 6 figures and beyond. And if you are over 6 figures, we have our Firestarter program, which will help you understand how to put the infrastructure in place to be able to scale your business and how to remove yourself from the day-to-day as the business owner. And part of that is looking at strategy. That is what you should be doing when you're working on your business. And this is the kind of thing that when you start taking that step back and giving yourself, block that time out. Assume it's a day that you're visiting your client, that it can't be moved. And this is something that you should be actually sitting there and saying to yourself, okay, this is what I want to be able to do. I deserve this time. I need this time to be able to think, and that will provide you with a much, much bigger experience in terms of how you can leverage your business moving forward. So that's let me know in the comments below. Do you schedule regular retreat times or think days or CEO reset days? How often do you actually do that? Because it will be interesting to see from your perspective how often you do that. Let me know. So one last thing that we will be talking about really is the CEO kind of move of what you need to be doing. So what is the CEO move of this week? Because when we've been looking at the topics we've been discussing, we were sitting down talking about AI, right? And we were talking about how AI is something that has a lot of power, but at the same time, how much control do we give it? And do we give it the nuclear codes? And what do we mean by the nuclear codes? And we've been talking about Meta and the power and control that platforms are having over us, as well as over users, over privacy, over the advertising, over all of these kind of things. Now, I've just noticed CBC, I think you're referring to like, wish you had time. Wish you had time for a think day. I know. I really know. I really, really, really know. And I think that it's something that we need to make sure that we are still adding that in and blocking that time out. Because guess what? If something happens tomorrow and a client said to you, hey, I need to be able to do this thing, or I want to do this, or can you do this? You would drop things. You would drop things. And you would be able to make time. In the same way that when we start looking at managing our finances, we sit there and say, we can't afford to do X, Y, or Z. I wouldn't be able to put away or to invest or to save, like, let's say $1,000 or $100 or $50 a week or a month or whatever it is, 10,000, whatever that number is. You will sit there and say, I can't afford that. Yet when taxes happen and they take that money out before you ever see it, you find a way to make your life work otherwise. And I think that this is the same thing, that you need to be kind to yourself, because if you want to invest in your future, you need to invest in blocking time out for yourself and being able to sit there and say, hey, I'm blocking this time out. And that is something. And you don't need to take a full day now. It can be a couple of hours every week, and then you slowly increase until you can. But use that, make that almost as a sales call. Make that almost as a meeting that you have with somebody that you cannot actually change. Hopefully that makes sense. So back to the nuclear codes thing. Okay, so what do we do with that? What does that actually mean? Because I think there are 3 tiers here. There are 3 tiers. One of them is autopilot. Give it the keys. And what are the things that you can actually potentially give, like, your employees and AI the keys to your business? And these are things that are quite safe and they are reversible. So things like normal factual information, stuff that goes up on in terms of like, this is the list of the program. Send me this document. Send me this information. Send me this. Things that are quite factual and stuff that actually, if they require no decision making, these are things that you could potentially put on autopilot right now and are being done in many businesses. And even now, when you see other businesses, you'll be able to see that actually there are AI bots that are sending documents and sending things and factual information and all of that stuff. That's stuff that you can potentially put on autopilot. Then you've got the second tier. So tier 1 is autopilot. Tier 2 is guardrails, right? And guardrails is where you need to make sure that you've got the right guardrails, monitoring what's happening, testing it, making sure that it's tested over and over again. You've got clear policies, you've got clear guidelines, you've got clear backups, you've got clear a whole bunch of different things that you're doing. And that could be things like appointment setting, because you've got appointment setting agents right now that are beginning to communicate with business, with potential leads and clients to book appointments for sales calls. You're getting AI to do certain things where they can communicate, but there's no big decision making. They're following an SOP in the same way that your business owner would, your employee would follow. So if your appointment setter can be something that's really automated and it's an SOP and you've got the right processes, you've got the right systems, you've got the right guardrails in place of not going outside these guardrails, then you can be able to say, okay, I can begin to give a little bit more functionality and more responsibility in that case. Last but not least is your nuclear codes tier. So we've got autopilot, we've got guardrails, we've got nuclear codes. And that's where, at the moment, it's still very much responsibility. Do not delegate responsibility to your AI agents, because when you're looking at delegation in a business, you're looking at, first you delegate tasks to employees, then you delegate responsibility and authority, and then you delegate strategy, and so on and so forth. And you kind of, like, depending on how senior they are and how experienced they are and how trained they are and how much time they've been in the business, that's when you begin to start handing over different responsibility modes and things. AI is nowhere near that second tier yet where you're delegating responsibility. At the moment, it can reply on your behalf, but you're still making the decisions. You're still making the strategy. You're still spending stuff yourself. You're in control and making sure that you have it from that perspective. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have a different way of setting down these policies or guardrails or whatever, I'd love to hear them in the comments as well below. So with that down, I'm going to go through some questions and see where we are. I think I saw a super chat earlier, so let's go to that first. Olivia Brown. Thank you, Olivia, for again supporting the channel. By the way, as we begin to grow, hopefully this particular regular show, if you will, we're going to start branding it potentially CEO Entrepreneur Live, and as we begin to grow this, we will be. I want to put in a lot of resources towards the actual show, towards the channel. We've made a commitment from a strategic perspective to really start pushing and growing the channel in a way, and being able to have support like this is something that I think will help us a lot and will help us be able to provide you with more details. Now, the question from Olivia is, I'm nervous about hiring in my business. What would you recommend I do when looking for the right person? That's a great question. So hiring is one of the most important things anybody can do in their business. When you speak to the most successful business owners, and as they have become and they've moved more into the CEO role, their time is divided between strategy and recruiting. Strategy and recruitment, because they know that systems part, which is really important, is delegated. So you have a system for building systems and your team go away and they build the systems, they execute the systems, they update the systems. Systems are important, but that's not the role for the CEO. Right, that down the line, that becomes the role and the responsibility of the COO, if you really want to get let's get technical. But the CEO is sitting down, looking at strategy, looking at direction, looking at really moving the business forward, but then at the same time, recruiting and hiring. So being able to find and look for the right people becomes so important. That's why it's such a really important question. So how do you go about doing it? You go about doing it in the same way that you market and sell to your clients. What do I mean by that? So you should be sitting down and saying, if I am going to attract a client to come and work and pay us money and work with us as a company, what is it that I would typically do? I would sit down and I would look at our branding. I would look at our products and services, make sure that we're solving the right problem for this client, make sure that we're providing so much value, make sure that we're talking about our values, our ethics, our code, all of that stuff. Excuse me. All of that stuff is stuff that you would sit there and then you would sit down and write copy, and you would sit there and say, come and like work, with us because we're going to solve your problem. Here's amazing copy. Here's a marketing campaign that you're going to do to attract your client. Here's this, here's this, here's this, here's this. And you're sitting down, and when you are in the place where you've got a sales call, you are practically trying to sell them your products and service. Hiring people is no different. And this is what a lot of people get. They fall into the trap of not thinking in this way about hiring people, because they sit there and they say, okay, let's put a job description up and let's find out, and that's the end of it. Let's see who applies. Let me pick the best of the bunch. And in all of those cases, there are so many wrong steps there. What needs to happen is you need to sit down and say, let's actually write the right copy. How do we attract the right person? Who is that avatar that we need to attract? What are their skill sets? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? How are they going to align with our team, with our values? How do we make sure that we call out that person? How do we call out that person and say to them, come and work for us because we're going to solve all of your, desires and dreams and satisfactions. And if you help grow with us, we will help you grow and achieve your own aspirations as well. And then if you can then attract the right people that way, then it's half of your story. That's half of the story already done. Then making sure that you are testing people out in increments in the beginning, hiring slow, firing fast. That's actually a thing. I don't mean to sound like really ruthless, but actually that's something that I've fallen in the trap of, where we've kept people on far too long. And actually you don't want to be able to do that. But in the process of hiring people in the beginning, you need to make sure that you are looking at their expertise. You're looking at testing them on small doses and making sure that they're actually doing the right thing. And you're testing them and seeing whether or not they're going to not just be a fit from a skill set perspective, a fit in your team, a fit in your values, a fit in your culture. You don't want them to be toxic, because they can be super amazing, but if they are toxic in your team, they will destroy the team. And these are the things that you need to be making sure that you're really thinking about the interview process, really thinking about the job description that you're announcing. Again, treat it like a landing page, treat it as copy, and calling out the people and saying, these are the people that we want and these are the people we don't want. If you are this person, don't even bother applying. And you're making sure that you're really attracting the right people, hopefully in the right way. So hopefully that makes sense. And thank you again, Olivia, for giving that super chat and asking that question. Right, so what other questions do we have where we can go through? Let's see, we've got another 5 minutes or so, and then we'll call it a day, and then hopefully take it from there. So let's see. Let's see if we can get questions. Excuse me. If you've got any questions in the future, please, if you've got any questions, if you can write Q next to it so that when I'm looking through the actual chat stream, then you know we can actually make sure that we're looking at this. I can find them easily. We've got a question here from Eric. How should a CEO design decision boundaries for AI agents? That's a great question. And I think it's something that we probably don't have time to answer in full detail. But it depends on the platform. Rather than looking at it from a tool perspective, I'm going to look at it from more of a strategic perspective. What you want to be able to do is you want to be able to make sure that you are managing risk first. Right? Because when you are looking at what is it that the AI agent can do, you also want to be able to make sure that what is it that it cannot do and it should not do. And then you are looking at it from a perspective of how do I build an SOP for the AI agent? Because that's essentially what you're doing. You treat them just like any other employee. And this is why a lot of times when we hire people and they look so good on paper and you bring them in, you find out in the end that they didn't do their job really well. And that's because we don't have the right systems in place and we don't have the right procedures and SOPs in place that provides them with decision-making ability, with the strategy, because strategy is there to say to people what to do, but also what not to do. And giving them the ability to say, if this happens, then do this. If this happens, then do this. If that happens, do this. This is how you escalate because you don't have any authority or permission beyond this point. So this is where the escalation points happen, and this is how to escalate. And this is who to escalate to, so that you are not sitting there trying to make that decision yourself. And being able to be very clear about these rules and boundaries is something that you should be able to do, whether it's for your team member or whether it's for your AI agent. And like I said earlier, if you're going to start bringing in AI agents and start treating them like employees, then start treating them like employees in every single sense of the word. Just make sure that you think that of them at the moment as very, very, very junior employees inside your business. Hopefully that makes sense. From a perspective of how to go about implementing it, obviously every different tool is going to be different. So whether you're using NA10 or you're using different things, there are different ways to implement that. And I think that that's a little bit beyond hopefully the scope of today's episode. So let me see. Any other questions? Let's take one more, hopefully. What are people's plans for the, whilst I'm looking for these questions, what are people's plans for the rest of the week, and what do you promise that you're going to do to yourself so that when we come back next week, you are actually being able to come back and we'll check in on you and we'll say, did you do that thing? Put it in the chat below, or put it in the comments if you're watching this after the live stream. Put down in the comments below or in the chat, what is it that you're going to really focus on over the coming week, and let's see when we come back next week you know, how to go about doing them. I think we have a question here from Rich 5467. I have so many clients after new launch. I don't have time to create workflow for an assistant. Please advise. Rich, I'm not quite sure in terms of what you mean in terms of please advise. I think that obviously everything that you need to do, you need to make sure that you're taking the right steps, putting down the right project plan, putting the right strategy. And this is something where you've said, I have so many clients after a new launch. By the way, first of all, congratulations. This is good news. This is a good problem to have. And being able to sit there and say, I don't have the capacity is something that, you know, you need to be working on in terms of like, you know, this is a good problem to have. Now, when you fall into as you're beginning to grow your business, you're always going to break your systems, right? So you're always going to sit there and find a way where the next constraint happens. Sometimes it's planned and sometimes it's not. In this case, it's not planned. But at the same time, if it needs to happen, this becomes a constraint because and the question to ask yourself is having an assistant the right thing that you need to do right now? Because if you are unable to create workflows, then is this across the board for the whole business? What is your biggest constraint? Is it the case that you need to offload to an assistant, or is it a case that you don't have the ability to create workflows or operations or systems or SOPs? What is the main constraint? And I only pick one constraint that you should be working on, because that's why a lot of people fall into the problem of delivery a lot of the time, and we get stuck in there. So, and then we've got so many different constraints that we think of, and we say we need to fix all of these at the same time, and we end up not being able to do any of them. So pick one thing, and if that's the thing that you need to do, then carve out some time. If it is actually that you need to create a workflow for an assistant, block out 2 hours every week until you're able, and work on it and say that that's the time I need to work on. If it's an extra hour a day, if it's less, if it's there are lots and lots of things that we end up doing where it's actually stuff that we sit there and say, hey, that needed not to have taken as long as that. And when people come on our Firestarter program in the first month when they work with us, we usually do a time audit with them, and typically we're able to free up about 10 to 15 hours a week just like that, because they are probably not focusing on the right things, and they're not working on the right things inside their business, and they are not leveraging the right their value per se. And they're not, there are things that you could eliminate, and we find a lot of things where we say, you don't need to do that, cut that out. You don't need to do this, cut that out. You can automate this, automate that. You can find a way, you can delegate this to somebody else, even if it's outsourced initially, do that. And then you begin to find time back, and then you'll start when providing and carving out that time to give yourself that sort of like working on that constraint. Hopefully that helps. Okay, so that will do it for today. Hopefully you've all it's been valuable, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you next week. And in the meantime, please make sure that you are focusing on the things that matter in your business, and not always inside it getting lost, because sometimes it can feel like chaos, but we need to take a step back out and actually turn that chaos into a little bit more of some common sense, and things. So thank you, Rochelle, by the way, and I hope I pronounced your name right. I know it says Rich5467, but Rochelle is awesome. Thanks very much, everybody, and I'll see you next week.